All right, why don't we open this gathering in prayer? Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks that your people gather, and when we gather, two or more of us, you are in our midst. So help us to hear you, to feel your spirit, and to listen to one another and to where the Spirit is moving in Montview. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you all for coming. I was just thinking how grateful I feel that you're taking the time to have this hour with us. Communication is probably one of the hardest things on the staff side of a church. You feel like you're putting it out, and then people just say, "Well, I haven't seen this," or "I didn't, where was this?" And we get it. It's you just got to keep putting it out there. You have busy lives. You're not seeing everything we do, but to take the time to be here during this hour gives us a real, just a concrete, tangible way to be together for a while. So thank you for coming. We got 4 or 5 different topics that we'd like to make sure we give you some kind of update. We'll pause after each one for any questions there because it's a little long to wait to the end, but we hope we also have some time at the end. So if you haven't formulated a question, after the section, that's okay too. We'll have a chance at the end, okay? So let's talk construction first, a construction update with the capital campaign projects. As you can tell, if you're here during the week, it's by and large, it is a livable space. We are using the spaces. We worshiped in Miller Chapel just on Christmas Day, for example, lovely, which was so different in terms of being up close. It feels so intimate. I just adore having this added space where we can worship together. And there are parts of it that still are not done. There are railings that are not in. The front doors are still not there. It's a combination of still supply chain issues. Everything. It's just the new world that we live in. There's just some things that are 18 months out, and what can you do? Or getting some subcontractors, because subcontractors are very busy these days. They get to go and choose where they want to be and not always listen to us. So we've had issues with the electrician, for example, being here when we need them, and so getting some lights in, things like that. All of that is still going on. All feels like it's what you'd categorize as the punch list, finishing that up, but it's progressing. It's frustrating for us on staff. Most of the work that you'd see being done right now is around fire safety improvements. And this was a bit of a surprise and a blow to us at the end of the campaign, or nearing the end of the construction projects. When things were about finished up, the fire department comes in at the end. They don't tell you what you need to do at the beginning. They wait until the end and come in and decide, depending on what you've done. And they decided that we have done enough significant change to enough of the building that we do need to bring the entire building up to code. That's about $400,000 to do that. It's state-of-the-art equipment. It does make our, this sanctuary, for example, has no fire safety, no fire alarm in it. It will have one after that. But you'll see some conduit everywhere in our church going in. That's what they're mostly doing right now. They will paint the conduit so it won't be quite so ugly, and so hopefully it'll fade from our perception. But right now, it's that's what they're doing most of the work on, and you'll see contractors here during the week doing that. So that budget impact was significant. We don't think of that as going over budget on the project, because we've actually stayed very close to staying on budget for the project itself. Where exactly we will fall at the end is still determined by some factors. For example, lending costs are going up, as we know. So from now until the time that we have all of our pledges in completely, we are using a line of credit. So the sooner that all of us can get our pledges in, this is the last year of the 5-year pledge commitment. So in fact, if you can get your pledge in at the beginning of the year, it's 2023 instead of the end of 2023, that lowers the financing costs that we are currently incurring. So a little plug to do that if you can. But even with that and a few other variables, in projects we don't know exactly how much things are going to cost, it's looking quite good in terms of coming in maybe $150,000, $200,000 over at the most, might be even closer. And we have to thank our contractor, Colorelli Construction and Tribal Architects. They donated a significant amount of time, and they love this building, they love who we are, and in the craziness that we've had in the last 3 years in terms of construction, they helped us in getting to a project that's done and basically on budget. So we're very grateful to them for those gifts. And then finally, I'll mention, if you remember, as part of the campaign, we made a commitment to partner with outside organizations and give $400,000 in one grant and another $400,000 in another grant cycle, what we call the Mission Impact Fund that we set up. And that's gotten going now. So we've decided to partner with Rose Community Foundation. A lot of you probably know that. It's one of the very well-respected foundations here in town to help us shape that process, because otherwise I think we would have a difficult time as volunteers, who are doing their best, but we don't do this for a living, putting together requests for proposals and receiving the grants or the grant, those that are applying applications. That whole process, they're going to help us with that. We'll still make the decisions, of course, about where those grants go. So our hope is that this first grant cycle of $400,000, we will have chosen that. The plan was to choose that this year, 2023. Depending on how quickly we can repay the $400,000 fire safety upgrades, will determine whether we actually have the $400,000 to then put out the RFPs and have people apply. So that might have to go until 2024. It, again, depends on how quickly we can all get our pledges in and actually have the money to put out there. Our anticipation is to do this grant cycle not necessarily two, but to divide that $400,000 with $200,000 locally or nationally. Could be in Denver, could be, a larger organization, and $200,000 globally, because this community has always been so committed to both of those kinds of ministry. And within that, we have the Mission Impact Fund guidelines. We focused those and updated those after we started those years ago. And we put those in the This Week at Montview email this past week, and we'll find some other places, I'm sure, on the website, so you can look at those. But I want to make sure you hear that we decided you have to focus some degree, right? You can't just say everybody and anybody. So what are the values? What are the areas where we want to focus that we'll choose recipients from? Eligible organizations and projects will seek to address social injustice and serve marginalized communities. So that's like the overall view, through one or more of the following pathways. So these focal points: homelessness and housing, something which church has been interested in or a part of doing our ministries for many years. Food justice and hunger relief, mental health, environmental or green initiatives, or racism. Those are obviously still very broad. Most nonprofits probably could angle to one of those, but it gives us a little more focus on where we will make those choices from, because it's challenging, as you can imagine. There's plenty of need. So I'll pause there, I think. How about any questions around construction, anything like that? And we've got Jason here too. Oh, good. Jason. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Ellen Reith, who serves on the mission committee, Mission Life Committee. We're going to have a listening session for the Mission Impact Fund, what I was just talking about. So if you've got if you know a nonprofit that you'd like to maybe would be a good candidate for a grant, or you just want to learn about where our money's going or how that process is going, February, I want to say 12th. Is that a Sunday? Mm-hmm. Is that right, Ken? Good. February 12th, after the 11 o'clock service, so about noon, in the Miller Chapel. We'll just sit and kind of talk more informally about the Mission Impact Fund. Thank you. Anybody else? And again, you can come back. Yeah, Debbie.
Or is that 400,000 just the line of credit, independent of?
Correct. The 400,000 we don't consider a part of the overall project. We do have some strategies for how to recoup that 400,000. We're fingers crossed. And Jason, you might want to speak to this. The employee credit. You want to say just a little bit about that possibility of that?
Right. The Federal Employee Retention Credit, which is the federal program where the church can receive credit for payroll taxes. We may be eligible in the range of 370, 385, somewhere around there. But we can't bank on those funds until they come in. We expect them to be in around April or May. So we'll know more about how that can help offset the cost of the fire later in the spring.
That's right. So that's the hope, is that most of that 400,000 gets recouped by this grant, or credit, sorry, not a grant, credit. Anything else around that? Yeah, Peggy. Great, yep. Yep, Peggy Gonder is just reminding all of us that our Mission Life Committee each year gives out around $70,000 a year in smaller grants, $1,500, $2,000, $4,000. And we do that each year. In fact, that cycle is starting now. If you have a little nonprofit, if you know a nonprofit, you can be a part of that. That's annual. This $400,000 is from our capital campaign. It's a one-time, this $400,000, then another $400,000 in a couple of years. That's out of the campaign, the monies that we raised. Thank you. Anything else? All right.
Shall we move?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next item. If you recall, Ian and I, about 5 years ago, used these monikers race, space, breadth, and connect, depth and connect, something like that. We thought they were very clever. But they have helped us with holding the riverbanks as we have made and cast a vision for what we've wanted to accomplish and what we felt Montview Church is being called to. So space, you heard about it, and we've been involved in it. And the next one is race. And so we were committed after especially the summer after George Floyd was murdered, that we began a process called a process and pulled together a team called the Anti-Racism Trust Team. It was a group of about 10 individuals, moderated by Leah Oliver and Diane Briscoe McKinsey. Staff liaison was Amanda Osenga. This original group of 10 or 12 worked very hard at beginning the work of awareness of racism and how to become an anti-racist church. So that was in 2020, the fall of 2020. Within 2 years, just a little over 2 years, you have seen the fruit of their work. There have been multiple small groups studying together the video series with Jamar Tisby called The Color of Compromise, and now another study called How to Fight Racism. You know that Jamar Tisby, Dr. Jamar Tisby, was here as the Montview lecturer. It was really more of a revival. So for those of you who were here, raise your hand. It took part in some of that weekend. Wonderful. It was an extraordinary weekend, and one that I think even pushed our work as an anti-racist church even further, to go deeper, to build relationships, and continue the awareness of systems of racism and injustice. So we cannot celebrate nor thank enough all of the people who have led that initiative, that work, and all the folks who have committed themselves to be involved in those small groups, our elders and deacons, lay people, people from outside this congregation that have engaged in that work and are committed to continuing that work for Montview Church and seeing where God is leading us. So that's just something to absolutely celebrate and be grateful for at this time.
Questions about that? Yep, one in the back. Can't see who that is. Is that Ellen?
Yeah,
Ellen.
the people on the live stream can't hear you if you don't have a mic. So let me give you the mic.
Thank you. I just wondered if you wanted to mention the Reparations program that's ongoing in a way to continue the racism.
The music.
When we sing gospels, which we will today, you're invited to donate in a reparation fund. You maybe can explain it better.
Yeah, no, that's great,
Yeah.
Ellen. Thank you.
Where's Adam?
Yeah. In fact, Adam's going to come back in a week or two. Isn't he going to be in adult ed? He might speak to this
Yes,
again.
on the 15th, actually, Adam will be in adult education again, speaking about that. But I also think interviewing the gentleman who
Yeah.
runs the Spirituals Project, so the 15th of January. Can
But
you explain?
Adam, this is Adam Wade, our Minister of Music, had the idea out of our own work as a staff. We were doing some staff work on racism, working with an organization, a Presbyterian organization, and in a conversation with his coach, had this idea that maybe as often as this church celebrates in worship spirituals, that we might be more aware of and make an offering of gratitude for the centuries of musical gifts of anonymous people who came out of slavery, who we don't know who wrote these spirituals, and so therefore, unlike other kinds of music that we celebrate where we pay royalties for the right to sing those songs, you don't have to pay royalties because we don't know who to pay them to. So what if we instituted a program where the church would every time we sing a spiritual, we out of some of our music budget will make a gift. The choir by themselves is also, they're so committed to this that they will make their own. There's their own invitation to make a gift, and the congregation is offered that chance to make a gift. And at the end of the year, we will the Ministry of Music, what we call WOMA, Worship and Music and the Arts, that committee is tasked with partnering with an outside organization that was either maybe something that works with black colleges or a theater group that's helping young African Americans come to find their space, and not just to give away the money, but to hopefully create a relationship and partner with them. So, and maybe that changes over the years of who that organization is. But a great idea. So that's questions about that. All right. Okay. We have some searches going on. Let's talk about the 2 associate pastor searches that we have going on. So the congregation, at the congregational meeting in fall, you approved a nominating committee for an associate pastor for youth and their families, and an associate pastor for congregational care and older adults. And just a reminder of who's on those. So the associate pastor for youth and their families is chaired by Phil Worth. Some of you know Phil. And Bob Noblet is, in fact, I know Bob is here. I saw Bob. Yep, raise your hand, Bob. Sorry, I'm outing you. Gail Berry, in fact, if you're here, raise your hand, it might be helpful. Gail Berry, we didn't ask them to be here, but Gail Berry, Stacy Whiteside, Eden Murphy is a youth in our program, and Vivian Showalter. So there's your nominating committee for youth. The other one is co-chaired by Linda Chain and Craig Parent. And on that team is Randy Smith, Pat Shepard, Mark Lovell, I think I saw Mark, yep, and Marty Sutherland, Pete Sevatusa, and Matt McConville. I think I saw Matt somewhere. He was here earlier. Yeah. So these two teams, they've actually gotten going. They've met together the first couple of times. They may have met since then. To put together, they start with something called the 12 questions that the Presbytery requests. It's largely about who we are as a church and what kind of person are you looking for, what do you need right now. And so they started that work together. That gets approved by session, then by COM, the Committee on Ministry at the Presbytery. Then they do the MIF, the Ministry Information Form.
We love acronyms,
I know.
Presbyterians.
That gets approved by session and approved by COM, Committee on Ministry at the Presbytery. And then they can go, live with the application or the
Job description.
Thank you. As you know, the associate pastor for youth should be an abbreviated search. The purpose of that is to help Amanda get ordained, our current minister for youth. So that will be a shorter process. The longer process of the associate pastor for congregational care will be bringing a new person onto our staff as an associate pastor. And so that will take, maybe by this fall, we might have that person in place, but that'll be a national search and a pretty focused search, someone who has experience with older adults and is an ordained minister. There aren't going to be that many people out there with those qualifications because we want someone with some experience, okay? And you'll start seeing regular communication from both of those APNCs now that they're kind of getting going. We'll make sure that they, write stuff in the TWAM and maybe do something here in the lectern periodically to give you updates on their work. All right, questions on that?
You're very settled group. All right. Word has it that my co-pastor is retiring from ministry, hanging up his robe. I know, that's word has it. At 20 years, and so I'm mad, but I won't say that. As my friend says, behind the mad is sad. So I'm sad. But we have moved on in terms of the process because that's what we do as Presbyterians. We focus on process. And the process for moving on after we celebrate Ian fully, well, never can we celebrate.
How could you?
Please.
How could you?
We have what is called an Interim CoPastor Nominating Committee. So an ICPNC. So when you hear that, ICPNC. So this is the role of a pastor who will come in an interim, on an interim basis, in an interim capacity. The process for that is also abbreviated and not fully the way Presbyterians ask a full search to be. What I mean, a smaller group of people have been nominating by the nominating chair, vice chair, and the chair of personnel. Names came forward and will be those individuals, 4 individuals, it's a small committee, will be approved by session. Those names will come to session in January 17th. Session approves those names and commissions that group to begin the search for an interim pastor, interim co-pastor. That group will begin their work, hopefully they're approved, will begin February 1st, roughly. They too will have the 12 questions, write a job description for the interim pastor. They will advertise that job. They don't have to do it in the national central leadership system. because that's a kind of a whole different elephant. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Elephant. That's a whole different animal. And what they'll do is advertise to those who are interested in interim-only ministry. So this person, do not remember what happened with Ian. This person will serve in an interim capacity and will not be eligible to be the full co-pastor in the future, all right? So that's an interim person. They will come on, God willing, in the summer-ish, that's the hope. Ian's last day is May 7th. And then that person most likely will serve about 18 months. That's kind of the average. And for a large church, things move at a nano pace. But we hope by this summer there'll be someone in place. I really hope that. And that person will serve for up to 2 years. During that time, another search committee will be called together, a nominating committee for the co-pastor nominating committee, and they will begin their work after that person is in place, and that, again, can take up to 18 months or so to call that permanent person. And as part of this process, we are partnering with a consulting firm called, wait for it, Holy Cow Consulting. They really are respected. They might need to change their name, but Holy Cow Consulting. And this is a very reputable consulting firm that helps churches in transitions, creating and crafting their vision and looking forward. They've worked with over 1,000 Presbyterian churches, not to mention Methodists and Episcopalians and all the others. So we will begin work with them in the next probably month or so. They will and look for a congregational assessment tool, a CAT, a congregational assessment tool that will invite your feedback about what you think is important, what you feel is important for Montview and Montview's future. There'll be multiple questions. We invite you to please do that online survey when you see it and respond, because that will help us and help the session in crafting next steps. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Questions there?
Questions about all that? Oh, maybe?
Thanks. This is probably a naive question, but I haven't gone through this process before. Why does it take almost 2 years to get a new pastor?
Yeah, right. That's what we all ask. The Pope is elected within like 6 weeks. And I feel like if the Pope can be elected in 6 weeks, it just moves at a snail's pace. There are forms, and as you can imagine, forms and committees that approve and pass along and pass back to the session, statements of intention, job descriptions, and then the search itself, because it's a national search, you probably get, at least 100, if not a couple hundred applicants. The committee does their diligent work in weeding those out, trying to make a good fit. This particular position, I have to say, as a co-pastorate, you really have narrowed your pool of people who want to work in a co-pastorate in a large church. I did.
You did.
I did.
You did.
As soon as I met him, I said, who wouldn't want to work
Exactly.
with that guy?
Exactly.
So it probably does narrow the applicant pool because of the model, this distributive model of leadership here. But Montview is an incredible church, an incredible congregation, and I would think it would be a very interesting job to many pastors of churches, and hopefully the good fit of a pastor who has pastored a large church, understands culture. That's especially important. And it just takes time, especially, I think, emotionally. This is where psychologically I think it takes time for a congregation to transition from a tenured, a 20-year pastor that they've kind of grown up with, and to begin that process of healing, even though it's healthy and good and there's nothing to mop up, God willing, and it's been good. But it takes time. And so that's what they say, 14 months to 2 years sometimes for an interim, from the time the person leaves.
From
I think
May
that's what
7th.
I've read. From May 7th, could be 14 months to 24 months. Does that help? Not at all. Clear as mud. Yeah. Miss Collins.
That I'll be 90 years old on the 22nd of this month.
Might have to sing to you.
Yay!
That's amazing. Thank you,
And it's
Mrs.
cause
Collins.
for celebration.
You know, as someone who's, someone in the back there, and on the way to that, Jason, raise your hand again. Or there's two of them. Oh, there's one here. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry,
Larry, go
Larry.
ahead. Oh. Yeah, but hang on, Janet.
Janet, hold
Hold
up,
on,
wait.
Janet, we've got
I didn't know there was
one here
a
yet.
question there. You're next, yeah.
Larry Green, I just wanted to give a name to this lengthy process that focuses a little differently. I personally see it as a great opportunity for us, the congregation. This can be a time of reflection about who we are, what we are, where we're going. It's more than just finding a person. I think it's a time to find ourselves.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Raise your hand there, Janet, so he knows, yeah.
Have the members of the IPNC or the PNC committees been chosen? And do you have those names?
Yes, the nominating committee, the chair, vice chair, and chair of the personnel put forth those names. It's perfectly acceptable for the session to have put forth those names, but we went through the process that we usually go through, which is our nominating team. So there are 4 names, and those names these individuals have said yes, but those names will be brought to the session for approval on the 17th of January. So those names won't be made public until then. And again, that's for the interim position. That is not for the permanent co-pastor position. That will come later. And I have had a couple of people say, I have a name I'd like to submit for consideration for that search committee, that nominating committee, and I think that is perfectly within their right to do that.
There was one more right behind you, at least, might have been, no, okay.
I have a question. I've had it for a long time, actually. Why is it that the Presbyterian Church seems to avoid using the interim pastor to either inform the appointment of the full-time permanent pastor, or at least why can't that person be considered?
Oh, my.
And you probably don't know the history of
My.
you know, well, let me speak to that. As someone, you know, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. So if you don't know, I came to Mountview as the interim 20 years ago. And
a Baptist.
And I was American Baptist. I was happy to have a job where they were going to fire me in a year because I didn't want to be a minister anyway, and this was all going to be over, and you know, really, and you know, I don't know how I feel very conflicted 20 years later, because on the one hand I do feel like God's Spirit was, you know, I can't let go of that a little bit. You know, it's gone well. I feel like I've been a good fit here. It's been a good fit for me, certainly. And I can see it more clearly now. When the person's in place, like I was, it's natural if they're, you know, a good person and, you know, can do what if you connect with them, to develop bonds, emotional bonds, or you're connecting with them in a way that doesn't allow the work of the committee to do their work that's out in the world and listening for God's voice. It muddies the process that they have to do. And if I knew that then, I think it's the interim's responsibility to make this really clear. And I didn't do that 20 years ago. I didn't know better. I'll play.
And you weren't required then to take interim training.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. I hadn't had interim training. So I feel very, I feel a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts about that 20 years later. But if I knew now what if I knew it then, I would have played a different role, and I would have been very clear about those boundaries of I really am going, and I have a particular role to play here while I'm here as the interim. So it's a live and learn, but I do think it's a good rule at the end of the day.
Let me add to that, building on what Larry Green said, the work of the congregation during a transitional time between pastors is self-reflective. Who are we? Where are we going? What is God calling us to do? And an interim pastor now, or a transitional pastor, they go by both names, they have to have been trained in an intentional training program on how to be an interim. So it's very intentional. The call is to help the congregation be reflective. The call is not to enmesh themselves in the congregation, right? To keep a healthy sense of margin between themselves. So their reflections or their thinking about the congregation or what they're hearing about how the congregation is doing and where they're going, that definitely is passed along to the session, to the committee, the permanent search committee. And so their work is not in vain, but ideally they are not called to continue on. Now, saying all that, there are small churches that are wrestling with, churches, the average size Presbyterian church in this denomination right now is 50 people, the average. So that is an epiphany. That is a wake-up call of how churches are struggling to fill their positions. And so we'll see how roles might change in the years ahead.
Good question. Yeah. Anybody else?
Lynn had a question here.
Lynn's got one up here if you don't. Yeah.
Could I add also, the interim looks a bit different in a co-pastorate as well, right? So those smaller congregations, you have a sole pastor or a senior minister leaving, the grief and the transition looks differently than it does when we have a co-pastorate. So even though the national denomination has these guidelines, it does sometimes not quite feel like it fits our culture.
It doesn't fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Can you explain the search for a youth minister and what's going on with Amanda?
Sure. Yeah. So we had a congregational, the congregational meeting back in the fall. We brought forward the two associate pastor searches. That one is a bit unique. We've been in communication or conversation with Presbytery for the last year or so, asking them, how can we help Amanda Osenga, our minister for youth, complete and be ordained? Amanda is certified ready for a call. She was when she came here. She took this position knowing it was not an ordained position. But she's done all the seminary work. She's taken all the exams, that the Presbyterian Church requires. And getting to know her over the last 4 years, we feel like that the denomination would benefit from her being ordained. She's done a great job, and we want to help her do that. So we explored with them ways of doing it that didn't involve creating an associate pastor position.
installed associate.
installed associate pastor position, they brought up the point that if any other, if we ordained her to be the chaplain of our preschool for 5 hours a week, we tried to get creative. They said that would she wouldn't be eligible for the Board of Pension Benefits, and so there's a justice issue here that if you want to do this, then the path is to create an associate pastor position. So it's a little out of the box. It doesn't change a whole lot. It won't change her job description much at all. We might have her explore some digital ministry, like how do we be ministers to people who are only connecting with us digitally? She does the work on racism already that's outside of the youth position exclusively, but we do that with all of our positions. Sandy Prouty does art here at the church, so we broaden those. But overall, it won't change her job description, nor would it change, if she's doing a great job, that's great. If she's not doing a great job, we'll do those job performance issues. It doesn't really change a whole lot of that. Saying goodbye to an associate pastor requires a vote of the congregation, but especially at the associate pastor level, that's still, just like in any other large multi-staff church, is largely at the discretion of her supervisors of how she's doing. So it doesn't change a whole lot. It's a little, it's a little out of the box, as I said. And I think we feel like it's the right thing to do for her life, and the larger church benefits from it. Yeah, Tom?
Just with being involved on session, wanted to make it clear also with respect to Amanda. Amanda recognizes that there's risk. The job position does need to be posted. So it will be a public posting. It just doesn't have to be as huge. Certainly, Session's goal is to preserve her great work and her legacy here and support her personal desire to be ordained. That does not mean that if somebody came along that was the absolute ideal better candidate, we are obligated to receive that person and interview that person and make that call too. So yeah, it can be the perception, and our goal is honestly to preserve that position for her. That said, it is an open position.
Thanks. Other questions? Yeah, Brent.
First, thank you for all of this clarity, just
It's a lot. It's
a lot of information. As you talk about process upon process and, acronym upon acronym, how can we as congregants best support through change and transition and shifting in all of, in a church that we all care deeply about?
Oh, I love that question so much. Thank you, Brent. Can I start with that? Because I was just thinking about that. I've been through, a couple of CoPastor retirements myself, and have watched the process, and have been where Clover is now. So I'd say a couple of things. One, this is where the CoPastor model really shines. Often in a large church, it gets built around a personality of the senior pastor, and when that senior pastor leaves, it's really disorienting for the congregation. Now, to Larry's point, this is a time of reflection and asking again who we are, and there's this steadiness of the river that's in place and will continue in place. I have found invaluable. So I've watched it twice where, when Bill left and then when Cindy left, certainly there was loss and grief and a chance to ask again who we are. And we kept doing what we do. And it was steady. I think there's something especially beautiful about this church, that it's credit to you all. We know we can do this, and there's a stability to it that I don't think anybody's as worried about, and I think Clover's the perfect person to be leading you all into this next chapter, along with Jason and Adam and Amanda and Sandy and all of the staff. We are in a really good position as a staff. They get along well, they're strong, they're caring. We just finished a very successful capital campaign. This is a very attractive church for new people to come to. I think Montview is going to move through this process really well. Having said all that, prayers for Clover and Jason and the other staff, a little grace. It's a lot. It just creates a lot of your attention needs to be paid to those kinds of things. All these committees, even though they're kind of sequestered and doing their work, they still have questions. Presbytery has questions. There's forms to fill out that take a lot of their time. So in some ways, the ministries of Montview do, I don't know if they slow down, but there's it's not a time of bursting new ministries, maybe, right? It's a transition time, and we'll do that well. So.
Yeah, I would add, and thank you, Bryn, for that question. I would add that any change is a time of anxiety, might raise anxiety, and we will do our best, as will the session, to be non-anxious leaders. But we invite you to lower the anxiety around you. I don't think it can be done any better than layperson to layperson. So if, for example, you're in a supper club and it starts getting wound up about, nervousness or, dare I say, just gossip, tamp it down. Lower the anxiety in the congregation so that we might move through this as calmly as we can. If you have questions, don't hold back. Come to the leadership session, deacons, staff. Bring forward honestly your questions, because when you hold back and talk to each other, it's not helpful for us. We would like to know, and I think we've proven ourselves pretty open-hearted. We try our best. So I do ask that of you, and ask that of our whole congregation.
That's great. Sometimes the communication, becomes this disconnect. And so assuming good intent, assume you've got a great staff. They are good-hearted. They are working hard. They are going to do their best to do this. They're not going to do it perfectly. There's going to be, it's a journey that we're all going on. My journey will go in a different direction, but
it's going on.
You'll be in my heart. But it's a journey. Yeah, it's funny. I can't even imagine not being with you on that journey, and you will be with me. Sorry. So it's a high trust would be terrific with your staff. That's how you can support them. Yeah.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I might add to quote Ian in your letter that you shared with the congregation. Now is the time to lean in. So to lean into worship, lean into your ministries, lean into your generosity of giving. Now is the time to lean in, not lean back.
Please, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. If you get asked to do something, please say yes. Don't pull your money back. It's not the time to go, well, we'll see how they do this year, and then don't add that stress to the structure. Yeah.
Went to hell in a handbasket once he left.
Let me just say, just to say a word about what I'm experiencing. It's a really interesting time to be in this liminal space of knowing that I'm about to step into something new that I don't know how many of you know. I have no idea what's next in my life, and so there's a bit of a leap of faith that feels exciting and not very scary, but a little bit. We do have kids that they don't want to go to college this year, but I think they will, and there's financial risk. And so I just keep circling all kinds of emotions from, I have such deep gratitude for the last 20 years of what this place has done for me, who the person I am, who I just never would have been able to become. And that's so much that I have felt so much support and trust and love from this congregation along the way. And so a huge gratitude, to fear, to just sadness that I can't quite get my head around that I'm actually not going to be here. You know, I kind of visualize May 7th when and it's, you know, I leave and I go get in my car and go, kunk, you know, and the car door shuts and I'm no longer the minister here. And it's, you know, and I'm trying to make myself do that in a kind of a spiritual practice to get in touch with that. So just to name it, I'm on my own journey with all of this and feel all over the board. And so sometimes I'm up here about to be in tears and other, you know, it's, you know, it's all good and natural and part of the process. But I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to say that. Just wanted to say it. You're what? You're slitting the tires on my car then? Yeah. Thanks, Tom. All right.
With the church of our size, last year in session, those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Hetzel. I'm the lead elder for 2023.
Hey, Tom, can you hold that up a little higher?
Oh, there we go. Okay. And by the way, I'm 60 today, so.
Oh.
Happy birthday, Dolores. Okay. That the church growing as it is, when you hear about the average of being 50 people, and you see a church like ours growing, that's not by accident. And what is recognized in the research relative to church emerging into a large church is one of the key factors of success in that growth, one of the key causes of that growth, is stability at the staff level. So just reinforcing what Jason said on the more spiritual side, but there's the factual, statistical side too, that I really, as lead of session this year, I can't reinforce enough how important and how amazing it is that we have staff that's been here as long as it has, as long as they have. So again, thank you. I don't know if we're talking about stewardship, but we're wrapping that up right now. We've got some messages out. If you have forgotten or if you've somehow missed out on any of those messages there, to fulfill your commitments there would be greatly appreciated so we can move forward with our work.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we'll close with just one more a little look into what might be coming is around how this church might be able to help the influx of migrants who are coming into Denver. You know, you're reading about. I'm really proud of our immigration task force and those of you who have been a part of supporting some of the Afghan refugees that we've been supporting the last couple of years. We're going to have a meeting on Tuesday. We had one meeting on Zoom. We're going to meet here in person to see if this church might be able to pool the resources to be an emergency housing place short term, like for a week. We would commit to 1 week of maybe 25 migrants that are in Denver that, you know, this is what the city's asking for. You can also, you know, support a family long term. We might do that in the future. There's coat and clothes drives. We might do that. But the most immediate need is that they're just a bit, the system's overwhelmed right now, and the city is asking churches if they can support this in any way. And we have Fellowship Hall. We've done the Women's Homelessness Initiative for years. We're good at it. We know how to do it. We know how to do 25 people. This would probably be families, women, children, and some men. We've got some safety issues we have to think through because they'd be here during the day. But we're thinking about how can we dip our toe into that. Let's try it for a week, and then maybe longer. So you may start hearing some about that in about a week or so, and I'm excited and proud of our volunteers who are heading that up. And they've said there are lots of you that will help with that because it takes a lot of volunteers, as you can imagine, to host 25 people day and night, meals 3 times a day, all of that. So that might be coming. What else?
I'll take a point of personal privilege since we're celebrating birthdays. I want to celebrate that my daughter is getting married Saturday here in the Miller Chapel. So I am a mother of the bride. No, I am not doing the wedding. I will wear a pretty dress instead of a big white sack. No, beautiful robe. But anyway, just want to share that because I'm pretty excited and the Beals are super happy.
Congratulations. Yeah. Anything else? Any other? Oh, yeah, over here, Susie.
I just want to share a moment of gratitude, and this is related to supper clubs. And it sort of feels like supper clubs are something that can help us as we go through this process. I think the video that y'all did in this last one was the most inspirational and wonderful that I could have received at this time. So thank you.
Which one was it?
Was this with Adam Morris?
The Spiritual Friends.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It's just out. Thank you. Yeah, we have Adam Morris, Rabbi Adam Morris, that some of you know. He's preached here. He joins us in a conversation about spiritual friendship. So even if you're not in a supper club, you can find that on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think the theme this year is, we've gotten really good feedback. The theme this year is taking your faith from Sunday into Monday, into the week. And so we're doing different topics around bringing your faith and spirituality into family life or with children, bringing faith into spiritual friendships. We're going to do faith in the workplace, faith in civic life, and is that it?
Marriage, partnership.
Partnership, yes.
That one.
Someone will be doing that. It'll be good. So we're grateful for that. And those videos are on the website, so you don't have to be part of a supper club to take part. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your good questions, being engaged in us. And then other kind of financial and business of the church topics will be covered in the annual meeting on the 29th of January at 9:30. Okay, so we hope to see you there. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.